Okay, hello and welcome to MSDynamicsWorld.com's Fall Professional Services Series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and I am really happy to have you all here with us today for this event. I am also really excited to be joined today by Bill Geist, founder of Turning Point Management, a consultancy that focuses on the needs of professional services organizations. Bill's a real veteran of technology organizations and professional services optimization, so we are really thrilled to have him today. It should be a great event. We also invite you to add your feedback and questions throughout Bill's presentation. There are a couple ways for you to do this. First, you can use the Q&A block and the chat block that you should see to the right of the slides. And feel free to enter your questions and comments anytime. And we'll also be tweeting a bit during the event, so you can follow us online. MS Dynamics World is our Twitter ID, and we'll try to use the hashtag MSDW Services or MSDWSVCS to share what we're hearing and to also listen for your questions. So, without further delay, please allow me to welcome Bill Geist.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you find this fruitful and beneficial as part of your organization. And feel free to ask questions because the interaction is what's absolutely critical to learning process. So thank you again, Jason, and welcome everybody. I want to talk a little bit today about managing a business, managing a professional services business, okay, and the use of tools for it. You're all consultants, you're all out there helping people implement tools, so you know all the benefits of having some of those in place. We're going to talk about cobbler's children today, you know, using the system internally for you running your own business. So let's start with a vision, because I think that's the most important. For you to think about what it is we're trying to get to. The real question is, are we looking to use these tools to help us run that business, or are we just looking to implement the system so that we've got some way to collect data, okay? And guess what the answer is, okay? Besides why does it matter, it's really what you measure or what you reward will become the focus of your efforts. So this is no different than when you're working with your clients, helping implement systems. You need to make sure that the system is adopted at the end. And so part of what we're going to talk about today is making sure that we've got a way to measure that and in fact, ensure the success of the system, successful use of the system. So what we're really talking about is the return on investment. Okay, so most times when we look at implementing systems, we do a cost-benefit trade-off. We conclude that there is a greater benefit than cost to do it, some ROI associated with that, and we go forward. However, the only appropriate vision there is when it's where value results in using the system in the business. I know this sounds like basics for people who are in the consulting world, but it applies to when we do things in our own world as well. And what I want to recommend is that right off the bat is that we make sure we establish measures and rewards that relate to the ongoing operations, not just a successful kickoff. I know when you're working with clients, typically you've got milestones, you have some celebration. Okay, we've created the conference room pilot, so let's celebrate that we've got that done. We've got the first installation, let's celebrate that. But typically with our clients, we're not in this celebration of the ongoing use of the system. And so I really want to suggest that we take a hard look at that internally. Okay, so let's go back to the vision. How does the vision appear? What you really need to do, and we'll talk a little bit about this, is make sure that that vision of using the systems really, you look at it from a variety of angles. So an external perspective, what does it mean to the client? What does it mean to your shareholders, if you have any, or investors or owners? And then internally, what does it look like to management? What does it look like to an employee? All those things, if you take those into consideration as you're building out the solution, you'll have a higher probability of success. So let's talk a little bit from a simple perspective, simple view of what that might look like. So externally, we put a new PSA solution in place. What does that mean to your clients, okay? It might mean that, okay, we've got a defined set of services and we can bill against those. It might mean that it's easier for them to conduct business with us, okay, that they can understand the billings, that they can pay their bills, that they can always see where they stand, and somehow it's tied to project success. And here's the real important thing is the data is correct. How often do you send out bills that clients then argue about? Well, they didn't work on that day. How come, or they didn't work on that task. Why am I getting billed for it? So what we really want to do is make sure that we've got correct and accurate data along the way. What's a simple view from it internally? It definitely means it's easy to use, okay, that you have timely access to information, once again, correct data. But and a different view from internal is we've got to have the ability to serve clients on an exception basis. Okay, so some clients want to pay you on a milestone basis. Some clients want to pay you on a monthly basis, regardless of progress. Some people want to pay you on time and materials billings. So we've got to have systems in place that will handle all of that. Okay. Also, the ease and timely access to information. One of the things we're going to talk about is integration with other solutions that you might have in place. So that's just a simple view of what it would be like. Important thing to do is to quantify and qualify that vision. Okay, so how can we compare ourselves to industry benchmarks or functional benchmarks? Tells us whether we're using the system correctly or whether we're going down the right path in general. Do we know what our client expectations are and what level of client satisfaction we're trying to achieve? Do we provide services in the marketplace that are differentiable, and therefore do we have to have some capabilities in the system that are different than your average time and material billing solution? What are the financial expectations of the stakeholders? In other words, how much is this going to cost? How much downtime or non-billable time gets allocated, overhead gets allocated to the use of this system? And then what are the perceptions of the employees? So they want to know that it's going to take no time to do this. Somehow it goes from brain to system without passing through a keyboard and having to connect online and whatever else. So we've got to figure out what those expectations are for the employees, and we're going to build a whole communication plan around that. Let me give you some information, though, about why this is important and what's the benefit of putting in place solutions like this. So some of you may be familiar with PS Village. It's an organization typically of professional services executives. Some are software company executives, some are peer services executives, but there's several hundred members in the organization, and it's a forum for sharing information about managing services businesses. Anyway, they did a survey earlier this year. They polled 150 PS executives. Well, they polled more. 150 responded. They asked 147 questions, so a pretty in-depth survey. This was not just your 5-question survey, are you happy and are you doing this, but all sorts of detail covering metrics around a variety of areas. You can see human capital, financial, pricing, and investments in operations. So interestingly enough, I'll just give you a few sample results. Some of them are pretty trivial pieces of information. Some of them are really kind of intriguing. So just, again, coming back to the vision and expectations, 52% of those people polled or that responded said they used 1,920 hours as a basis for utilization. This is an argument all the time when you try to compare one company to another. What's your utilization level? Some people use 2080, some people use just 2,000, some, in this case, 52% were using 1,920 hours. How they came to that is subtracting out holidays and some level of vacation and whatever else. Why is that important? It's just important so you have a vision and your expectations are clear, both with your employees and with your external measurement, external comparisons, okay? Another statistic that came out of this was 45% had utilization targets greater than 75%. I thought that was kind of interesting that we, in this day and time, that we can push people past 75%. On the other hand, if you look at half of them are only using 1,920 hours as a basis for utilization, it really, if you were to use the 2,080, it's going to be more like 70% utilization. So that seems to be more in line with my experience in terms of what people are out there. So just as a gauge, where are you today? Where are you comparing to others? And how does that play into the system? Well, there's metrics that come out of the system, so we need to know how that's going to appear. Here's an interesting aspect that I found. Only 25% of the respondees have a dedicated resource manager. And I found that to be very interesting because utilization is absolutely one of the key areas for financial success in an organization. And so and they were polling organizations of all sizes. So this wasn't just smaller organizations that had the ability to manage assignments by phone on Thursday nights. Their organizations were of various sizes, and only 25% have a dedicated person to do that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. In addition, only a third of them had a dedicated sales staff, so very dependent upon the street credibility of the senior people on the team. They're clearly either making speeches on their own or networking on their own in order to win business because there was not a separate sales staff in 2/3 of the organizations. Okay, here's the magic finding. 38% have not implemented an ERP or PSA system to manage operations. That was absolutely startling to me out of this survey. And what we're going to do is maybe take a moment, a poll at the moment, to see where the people on this call are. You should be able to see the poll there. Very simple question: are you using an ERP or a PSA solution today? Just answer no if you don't have one, and then there's yes if you're standalone, okay, not integrated with anything else, and then yes, let's say if it's integrated with CRM. Okay, we'll get the results of that in a moment, and we'll see if it's consistent with PS Village learned. This is, again, startling to me. Why is it? Because let's look at the next, let's see if I can go to the next benchmark report, which was published by SPI Research from out of Boston area. They have a model which is called a Professional Services Maturity Model. And so they did a benchmark survey early this year against that. And here are some of the results. If you're not using a PSA system, a solution, and what happens if you implement a solution. So you'll see revenue per employee rises, revenue per project rises, and here's a very startling response. EBITDA nearly doubles, okay? So absolutely fascinating. So, okay, we've got the poll results in. I don't know if you can see them out there, but let me just give you that. It looks like 36% are using a standalone ERP or PSA solution, and then another 14% have an integrated solution. So now we're up to 50%, and so comparing that back to our previous one where 62% had a solution in place. Okay, we're just slightly behind that group, but still clearly an opportunity for improvement, particularly if you can get these kind of financial improvements. So let me just steer you to a place where you can get other information. You can get to about these, the benchmarking. You can go to PS Village. There's an organization out there that many of you may know about, the Technology Services Industry Association, also called TSIA. You can always go to Forrester. I referenced SPI Research. Clearly, you can go to vendors. They've got a lot of information. And then just from a standpoint of the client side of this, there's a book out there I encourage you to read called Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard. So there's sources of information for you to look at, how to justify a system, why you ought to do it, how big it should be, everything else. Just give you some tidbits there. Let's go back to the vision, getting started with this whole process, okay? When you're dealing with clients, you always talk to them about people, process, and technology, okay? That's really, standard type stuff. And as I say, have you seen this before? Absolutely. We want to go into a consultant, and we want to into a firm as a consultant and advise them on a variety of aspects. Here's a matter that isn't necessarily standard in consulting firms, but getting a great deal of attention right now, and that's your products. So the productizing of your services. This is absolutely very critical for growth. Okay, SDI Research has just come out with some studies around this, and I think you'd find it very interesting. And then the fourth area is data, okay, having it captured, cleansed, and integrated. So these are components of the vision going forward. What would your firm look like? How would it operate, okay, differently, presumably, to get better results if we had systems in place? And so these are the 5 areas that we would clearly want to target. Let's talk about some important matters, though, in putting together a system to help manage your consulting business. Standardization of processes. Okay, what do you have in place today? How standard are they? Is everything a one-off project? That creates some challenges in putting in place a system. What are the points of integration? Can we do that with CRM? So some of you answered yes for that. With your financials, with Microsoft Project or other project management tools, we want to be focused on that. Okay, what level of customization are you willing, can you tolerate in putting in system, or can we do it all as vanilla as possible? What's the sequence of functions? And we'll talk about all those functions that would be addressed in the PSA solution. So we'll go through that and what's the sequence that we ought to deploy. Again, some of these are no different than what you're doing with your client, but we're going to talk about how they fit into a consulting organization. What data do you have today? What's the quality of that? What's the nature of your employee base? Okay, here's some challenges. If the team of consultants that you have in your pool are primarily employees, we can focus on their loyalty, their adaptability, and the like. If the pool of consultants that you have are typically independent contractors, you've got a separate matter in terms of achieving compliance with processes in the new system. So you've got to take a look at what your employee base is like. Similarly, we have to talk about how big is that base and where is it, okay, from a training perspective, from interaction, from oversight, so a variety of things. All these are matters that affect how we deploy a solution out there. Well, let's talk about the operations that fit into the PSA and why you'll see when we go through these, why those firms that have implemented solutions have greater financial results. So the simplest portion of this is your time and expense reporting, whether that's daily, weekly, biweekly, monthly. One of the ideal environments is to be able to do it offline as well as online, although most people are shifting to a SaaS solution, so really there's only one way to do it, that's online. Linked to project plans. So here's where systems typically run into trouble and are also the weakest point of integration. The ideal scenario, in my mind, is where you've got a bi-directional interface with your project planning tools. Okay, so in fact, your consultants will only have to enter time once. Essentially, if they're on a task 122 for project A, okay, they report their time against that. The project manager can now see the time and the success associated with that task, but that time now gets reported right into the PSA solution, and they don't have to do a separate reporting of it. That is actually the ideal scenario. It is not common, but it is an ideal scenario to minimize the entry, to ensure the accuracy of the data, to ensure the integrity of the data. So that I just encourage you to think about that. What do we have to do relative to approvals from clients? Some clients require sign-off of time before it can go into the billing system. What approvals do we have to have from project managers for billable work? And who authorizes non-billable work? So we want to make sure we account for 40 hours every week, unless they're part-time employees or if they're independent contractors that you don't expect 40 hours from. We have to handle those exceptions. And then we've got exception reporting in general. What do we want to do in terms of people who are late, haven't provided their data, went on vacation, no way to report, their time. We've got to handle all sorts of exceptions like that. So that's the time and expense reporting part of PSA. Let's talk about resource management. And the ideal scenario here is that we can look at skill sets. We can look at, well, we'll look at a variety of things. Prospective demand. Okay, so we've got proposals out there or opportunities out there. What skill sets are needed? What's the time frame? How many people are going to be required for that? We talked just a moment ago about linking performance on current projects to resource demands. So if task 192 was supposed to take 57 hours, and it looks like it's going to take 82 hours, okay, where does that extra time come from? All right, what do we do from a resource management? It's going to come out of some other project because we've already committed that resource to do something different. So we've got to have a way to link the resource management through the PSA. Capacity and demand by skill, level, role, and factors in use of external resources. We talked a little bit about that. And then how do we incorporate non-billable time commitments? So vacation, holidays, people have commitments for training, there's administrative meetings, we have company retreats, whatever goes on out there. How do we incorporate that into the scheduling process? And then what do we do for exception reporting? People who are underutilized, where we have capacity constraints. All these are components that we'd want in a PSA. And we can move to another aspect of it, which is managing projects and portfolios. How do we deal with task management, okay, scheduling, risk management, which is the most probably difficult aspect to include in any PSA. So if you're rating your projects as red, yellow, green, okay, how do you come up with criteria that can be used in a systematic fashion for ranking that and therefore leading to some risk management? What do we do for compliance reporting? That is, could be just, when I talk about compliance, it's a variety of aspects. It's compliance with using the system, but it can also, if your services world are connected with software, how do you deal with revenue recognition? Okay, might be percentage of completion on fixed price projects, and if it's tied with software implementation, we've got other issues around that. How do we do prioritization of projects? So we gave you the example a minute ago where that task was going to overrun by another 25 hours, going from 57 to 82 hours. And how do we prioritize the work on that versus client number 2 who needs that skill set at a certain time? So we've got to have an ability to manage all of that. Product costing and accounting. So how do we deal with the gross margin management reporting? What are we incorporating into that from an accounting perspective? So all of these, I'm not going down to the level of detail there. I'm just trying to provide you some indication of components that fit into the PSA. And you can see as we talk about all of these things and the integration of these points of functionality, why those companies that have implemented them get better financial results. Okay. Here's another example of areas that we deal with, which are financial management. Okay, we want views by project, profitability by project, profitability by client, profitability by practice, overall profitability. So we're not just producing a single income statement or P&L. We're looking at it from a variety of perspectives. My guess is that few of you are looking at specific project profitability or client profitability. That's my experience. That's not a common view, but in fact, it's really important to look at because there are some clients you need to fire. Quite frankly, the ones that are costing you way too much. Every project they negotiate really hard on. Once you agree on the project, then we get extras being asked for. And if you take a look at their overall experience, how much time you have to allocate to managing that client, it might not be as profitable as you would like, and therefore that's bringing down your your overall business. Okay? That might be a great client, but if it's costing you, if there's opportunity cost, you could be working on a more profitable client, you need to be thinking about that. Okay. Margin analysis, of course the margins could, the analysis could run across periods, so we always look at monthly periods. Projects run greater than a month, they run greater than a quarter, might run greater than a year, or across an annual boundary. So how do we have to manage that, and that's an issue within some financial systems. Clearly we want to get metrics coming out of this, average billing rates, utilization, retention of people, all sorts of things. Forward projections. So the ideal PSA solution allows you to project forward. So if you've got current projects in place and you have proposed projects out there and you have staffing in place and potential needs for staffing, it'd be great to look out the next quarter and see what you might be doing from a resource management perspective, what you might be doing from a financial perspective. So that will give you a great insight into actions that you need to either close some projects sooner, or acquire some staff, or heaven forbid, we have to reduce some staff that's out there. So some interesting challenges around that, and just other aspects of financial management that you can see. So I've provided a variety, why do we do this? So we can have a smoothly operating business. We can get better financial results for the organization. We've talked about the vision for this and the elements that might factor into that vision: resource management, project management, the financial side of this, the time and billing aspect of it. The real question now is where do we start? Okay, and let me give you a couple ideas on that. Typically as consultants, we go into a client. They say they want to implement XYZ, okay, solution. And we typically start with as-is documentation. We go out there, we document everything they're doing today so that we can know what's going to change. I'm just going to give you a piece of guidance. If you try to do that internally, particularly when you don't have a lot of systems in place, you're kind of wasting your time. We really need to look at what data we have today, what are the integration points, and then we can come up with what the future, we'll be able to go match that against the future vision. Okay, one of the reasons we always do the as-is with clients, okay, is it obviously gains us greater revenue. We don't know anything about the customer, so we can learn a lot more about their operations. It allows us to identify future opportunities for work. Okay, when we're talking about our own business, we already know our business. We're not trying to gain future consulting business with ourselves, and so we can start with basically data and integration points and not spend a lot of time finding all the documenting all the as-is. The future vision, I'm going to tell you, should be divided into components so we can facilitate implementation. I don't know how all of you feel about the Big Bang Theory, and that's not the show that's on TV today, but the Big Bang Theory of turning on all aspects of the system at once. I think that becomes pretty challenging. So I think that future vision really needs to look at what do we do first, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Do we start with resource management? Do we start with project management? Do we start with time and billing? And how do we handle all that? But we come back and we'll put that in place. And I'm also going to suggest to you a starting point is the reporting options. What do we really want to get out of the system? Because once again, the benefit for this system is derived from the use of it. So let's go back to how are we going to use the system, the information coming out of the system to manage our business, and that will derive some of the data structures. And give you an example or two of that. Sometimes when I've implemented systems, we get into situations arguing about what should the client number be. Okay, so every client has a number. We don't just do it alphabetically. So whatever number there it is, and then somebody says, well, we work for a division, and then we work for a related division, then we're going to do something for the parent company. So what should that structure look like so you can manage the profitability around that appropriately. So those are some aspects of the reporting that we want to take a look at, because right now you might have each billable client might have a unique number. So if you want to be able to do reporting by client, and that client is a division of another organization, you lose that ability to do so, or you make it more difficult from a reporting perspective. So I would suggest that we take a look at those reporting structures. Okay, so I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself in terms of that point out there, reporting options. So let's talk about other factors that are involved when we're putting into place a PSA solution. Okay, your breadth of service offerings and the contractual terms affect your ability to standardize processes. Okay, so is your consulting firm one that does basically repeatable projects and has a methodology for it? We implement Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and we got a starting point where there's a 3-week, $22,000 launch where we have conference room pilot, it's up and running, and now we can play with it and figure out what to do. So that's one way. If you've got that in place, then we can build a system around that pretty easily. What if everything's a one-off project? All we do are strategy projects, and we do it for firms across a variety of industries, sometimes retail, sometimes manufacturing, sometimes financial services. And while we've got some general questions we ask, every project's one-off. Well, what does that mean for the system and the measurements of it? Also, what's our typical billing mechanism? Do we establish fixed price projects? Do we time and materials? Do we do retainers? All those will affect how we bring the systems up. Okay? There are concurrent paths you can undertake to implement the system. So you might be doing something relative to project management, might be doing some actions around resource management. In particular, in resource management, it's best to have a skills matrix out there. Good to have estimating tools in place. And again, if everything you do is one-off, you might not have estimating tools. If everything you do, or nearly everything you do, is repeatable, then you probably got good estimating tools. And then the interface, the bidirectional interface that I keep harping on relative to project management. Those are all important parts. So the question is, what do you start with, okay? And we'll deal with some of that. Some of you may be saying, Bill, you're turning this, you know, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. And in some ways I am, absolutely. Because my goal here is to recommend that you figure out your overall vision and then move along a path towards that vision, which might take several steps. So yes, I don't want to scare you, but I also want you to think about the big picture and make that your end goal. So just like the projects you undertake on behalf of clients, though, keep in mind that change isn't going to come easily internally. All right, just because we push change on all our clients doesn't mean that we're going to adapt to it well. And so we've got to think about that. I also want to recommend to you that a commitment to completion is imperative regardless of client demands. It's not unusual in a consulting firm for us to take the unassigned people and put them on a project, and as soon as they're an internal project, and as soon as they get assigned, we take them off that internal project and the internal project stalls. Okay, so we really need to make the same kind of commitment we ask of our clients when we're working with them to assign people that will be able to see the project all the way through. And then here's perhaps a silly question, but yes, every employee must participate in utilizing the system. So why do I put that under the scared column? Because we all know that there are some really super consultants who don't want to worry about this kind of administrative stuff. But you won't be able to manage your business if you don't have all parts of it included. Let's go back to the vision, because the whole presentation is about operational excellence. Okay, so let's go back to that vision of operational excellence. In my mind, every proposal that you put out would have a project plan with resource requirements. That may be unrealistic, but that's my vision for it, which is, and the reason for that is now we can do planning, resource planning, and financial planning in the future because we know what potential projects are out there. Another aspect of this vision is that all time is reported against authorized projects or approved non-billable work, permitting you to do true project management, margin analysis, and metric reporting. Okay, so everybody's got a report, no eating of time. I know there's lots of reasons why we do that, for why project managers force consultants to do that, but in the end, we have to have it all in there to effectively manage our business. Resource availability and requirements are generally known in advance of the occurrence. I mean, maybe that's more of a dream than anything else, but should be out there. Here's something that's a great opportunity that comes out of the system, and that's the status reporting with clients. We can always go back to them. We've got all the metrics that we need. We can go back and show them how we did the project. We can show them the hours by task. We can show them the reporting by task. And we can talk to them about what's working and what isn't working. And it always helps that situation that when we encounter problems, okay, if we've been operating along the way, providing status reports that deal with a lot of metrics and financials. Okay, so that's some of the vision. Here's some other aspects of the vision. Practice management is enabled because we've got financial analysis and metrics available. So trending is really important. Be able to avoid future crises, whether that's too much staffing, too much work, whatever it might be. That forward look is really important. The other aspect to this, in my mind, is recruiting becomes routine. Okay, well, how does that fit in, Bill? Well, if you can look out 90 days, 180 days, you can see what some of your demand is, you can see what your resource requirement. Then you should be able to constantly keep a warm pool of talent out there and be able to call them in time for projects instead of this last minute, oh my goodness, we just won this project, we have to start next week and we don't have this Java programmer or a .NET programmer or somebody that we need. Now we've got to scramble all weekend to try and find that person, get them authorized on our system, work through that. So to me, that forward look allows you to manage the business in an intelligent fashion. So what are the goals? We've got a vision. What are the goals in this environment? Well, from a financial perspective, our real goals are higher utilization, yielding greater project and gross margins, and superior operating incomes. That goes back to that benchmark study that's done by the SBI research. That's really, to me, the financial results that come out of this. But marketplace success is also important. I would suggest to you that by managing your business better, you'll get higher win rates, you'll have greater client retention rates, and you'll have superior customer satisfaction, okay, which we call raving fans. All of that would come out of having a system in place that allows you to manage your business while you're delivering services to your clients. So that's the vision, that's the goals. From my perspective, I've shown you some of the results of having systems in place, how to get there, and certainly we haven't talked about which are the right solutions because I'm not here to advise you on that, but there are a variety of solutions out there. And you can take it from here and basically go back and look at your business and choose what are the areas that you need to improve from a management perspective. So just reiterating what we started with, which is achieving operational excellence is a journey. We talked about all the aspects of it, but the destination, which is a smoothly operating business, is where you're really going to realize value. So thank you very much. I'm open to questions, comments, plaudits, critiques, whatever. And I hope you all got something out of it. Since half of you do not have a solution in place, there's at least half of you that I assume can be thinking about how to go forward with it. Jason?
Great, thanks, Bill. Great material there, and we are definitely open to questions now. So use the Q&A block, use the chat tab. Let us know what you think. Let us know your questions for Bill Geist. Bill, we do have one here, sort of a getting started question. What functionality is most important to start with in ERP and PSA solutions? Should it be resource management, project management, time and expense reporting, or billing?
Great question. Where do we start? So from my perspective, if you don't have fundamental project management capabilities, task definitions, if you can use call with work breakdown schedules, whatever. But if you don't have basic project management capabilities, then all the systems around it are going to be suspect. So for me, making sure that you've got some method for managing projects at the task level and reporting time against that is probably the first and foremost area to go. Because that feeds everything else. If we got task definitions, then we can report against those tasks for project management, and we can also report against it for billing, and we can also communicate to clients about it. You can't do resource planning without knowing what work level's out there. So absolutely, project management is first and foremost.
All right, another question that we have here. We always start projects with an as-is documentation effort. Why do you suggest otherwise?
So someone out there didn't like that idea. So part of my feeling is the more time you spend on as-is, the more you reinforce the current environment, okay? And that means that change management and adoption of new systems becomes more difficult. So I recommend minimizing the focus on the as-is environment and maximizing the focus on the future environment. And it's just somewhat of a psychological message to you as well. But I find that when we document as-is environments, we end up finding all the exceptions that we have to deal with, and we try to address those exceptions in the new systems instead of focusing on how some standard solutions that are out there might be a more compelling way to run our business. So again, it's just a personal style that I do think you have to know what data you have, what data structures you have, what reporting goes on, but the more emphasis that you place on as-is, the less enthusiastic people will be about changing to some new vision.
All right, enter your questions now. We have one last one in the queue here. What should I do about employees who typically do not use or submit data late to our PSA?
So you've got a superstar that says, I was too busy, I had a social commitment, I couldn't get that in, and of course that screwed up your billings. The most important part is that screwed up your financials. That means a single consultant who chose not to participate has affected essentially the financials of the firm. And so I guess I have to always ask that question is, as the owner or the general manager of the business, how much authority and power do you want any individual consultant have over your wallet? Okay, so from my perspective is it's imperative to find a way to motivate that person, every person, to participate in the system. So maybe we have to create a reward structure. Could do a reward structure, or you could do a penalty structure. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you fire people that don't participate, although that may come to that. But maybe there's a way to reward those that are using the system in a timely fashion, whether that's financially or through recognition. And maybe there's a way to do some team building around that so that peer pressure improves. But in the end, I look at it from the ownership or the management of the business. Every person that doesn't participate is costing me money because I'm not able to bill in a timely fashion, therefore I can't collect in a timely fashion, therefore I don't have money in the bank. And so, the ideal thing, which the government really doesn't allow you to do, is to tie compensation. In other words, you don't pay a person if they haven't gotten their time reported, which is exactly how you do with contractors. But relative to employees, you're not necessarily permitted to not pay them if they haven't reported their time. So we've got to find another mechanism. Nonetheless, just keep in mind that it affects the bottom line of the business if it doesn't work. So it's imperative to address.
All right, great. We are at the end of our question queue. I'll maybe make one final call here. But if we don't have any other questions in, I will just say thanks again to you, Bill, for your time today. Great session, great information. And,
thanks. Hope
we'll be, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
Okay, we've been recording the session today, and it'll be on demand on our website soon. So thanks again for attending, and keep on the lookout for other upcoming webcasts this fall from us. Thanks again. Have a great day.